Hi, welcome to the New Wheat Report for the week of October 18th, 2019. I'm your astrologer, April Shaley, and we are at the last quarter moon, just in a couple days. We're coming down from the full moon in Aries, that the moon is waning, so the energies are ebbing. Right now, the lunar energies are ebbing, the emotional, physical, energies of the moon are waning, and we're moving toward this new moon in Scorpio that happens on the 27th in the transformative sign of Scorpio. So new moons are always renewals of the energies. And the moon is very personal, very instinctual, very physical. It's like the interface between the physical and the emotional. We kind of think of those two things as separate, but the moon would say it's not. It's very much not. So the new moon happens in Scorpio next week, and that's going to be in the sign of rebirth, of transformation, of renewal, of the shedding of a skin and the vulnerability that comes with that. Okay, so that's what we're headed towards. We're headed towards Scorpio season, but we're still, at the time of this reading, we're still in Libra season. The sun is in Libra, and at the time of this reading, the sun is at 25 degrees of Libra. The sun is not entirely psyched to be in the sign of Libra. It's not where the solar energies are the strongest. It's stronger in the opposite sign of Aries, where the sun can really just boldly, be totally yangified, like shining and going forward, and the sun is reborn in Aries. In Libra, there's a lot of weighing out and diplomacy needed, and relationships are important to the sun in Libra. So the sun isn't like super able to move forward, but that is in itself part of the energies of the times. That's part of the energies that we are learning from right now. It's like, okay, how do I function when I may be not in my own element? And what kinds of things can I learn about myself when I find myself out of my element, when I'm not in, maybe my strongest, the situation where I'm the strongest? How can I shine anyway? What can I learn about my path and my trajectory in life, being in a situation that might not be, where I feel most at home? And that's true for Mars too. Mars is in Libra right now too, where Mars is also, opposite his home sign in Libra, in the sign of Venus, this Venusian sign, Libra, having to, instead of just being able to go out there with his sword like the warrior and get out there and fight just impulsively fight the fight based on passion, here in this sign, he's got to play chess. He's got to, be strategic about the way that he's doing things. And I say he because in the mythology, Mars, Aries, is a male god. And it's the male symbol. I mean, it's the most masculine of all the planets, right? So in this sign that is more about relating and the relationships between all things, he might feel a little bit hemmed in by that. But yet that is also, Mars in Libra is like the strategist, the general, the diplomat, politic is polite war, right? So this is the kind of energy that Mars Libra has. So what does that mean for us? Well, it can mean that right now, even though we might want to make a decision that's very clear and, forceful and correct, and just move forward on that, there is a lot to weigh. There are relationships between a lot of different things that may need to be worked with and may need to be considered. And so we might not feel like we could sort of be stuck in a waiting pattern a bit right now. Given that there's the Pluto-Saturn thing going on in the backdrop, grinding toward culmination, grinding toward conjunction, right? when they are actually with each other at 23 degrees in January, these two planets are sort of grinding toward this conclusion, toward a major big ass reset button on, power and authority and responsibility, the ability to respond, the ability to author your own life, to write your own story, and we don't just exist in a vacuum. We can't just write our own story in a vacuum. This idea that we just create our own reality and it's all your fault if your reality is a little fucked up right now, that's quite solipsistic, really. And I've come to that place at this point. Like, life is it's relationships. Everything, we are relating to everything at all times. Even our bodies, even the chair you're sitting on, it's not as material as it seems to us living in the physical plane. This is actually made out of, when you bring it down to its smallest and smaller and smaller and smallest, aspects, there's actually nothing physical there. It's possibility. So everything, we have the idea that we are a separate body with a separate ego and separate stuff, and that sink is separate from the tree outside and, all this, but it's actually just completely interconnected. And most of the things that we think are things, it's actually a concept of a thing. That's a camera. That's a computer. If you can let go of that for a bit, it's really hard to do and takes a lot of, meditative work. But if you can let go of that, you can see that these things are not separate. So this sense that we are just a separate ego, and that we create our own reality at every turn, and it's all on us to be responsible for every aspect of our reality, that may not be true. And so Mars and the Sun in Libra can kind of show us that right now. During this time where Pluto and Saturn are coming together, Pluto and Saturn are speaking the language of the fates. That's kind of what they're up to. They're showing us what the fates, what they bring. The web of weird that the Norns weave, the fates. There's many cultures have a different kind of personification for this feminine energy. This divine dark, it could be seen as feminine energy. Dark meaning in mystery, unseen, invisible, not evil. Okay, so we have to get over that idea too. Like, in mystery. And that there's something fated to what's happening with us right now. This doesn't mean that we abdicate responsibility. We are always have the ability to respond and make choices, Libra, in our lives at every turn. We're also co-creating what's happening. Every card we're dealt, every, strand on that web of weird, every bit of woven, energy that the fates weave, we can have a creative response to that at every turn. And that's life, is the ability to create, because we ourselves are the universe itself. We are divinity. We're not separate. And we've been taught that since, like, most of us have been taught that divinity's out there, up in the sky, and he's a guy, right, with a beard, judging us negatively, of course, especially if we're like sexual or, doing anything that's like not, what some people say is the moral thing to do. And that then we suffer accordingly, right? We're punished accordingly. And, again, divinity's out there, and we're these lowly creatures made out of sin who should be, ashamed of ourselves at every turn, right? And we don't have a lot of say in what happens to us, and etc. So if we can sort of reorient ourselves toward, both that we are divinity itself, doesn't mean that you're God over other people. That's giant ego. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in sync with, in relationship to everything that is. We are the universe itself. And because of that, we are part of a whole greater process of unfolding that's happening at all times. And so it's more, I think the energies are more about being in that dance, listening to the music of the universe and being in that dance, dancing as you hear the music, rather than trying to sort of clamp down and plan, over plan or over control or dwell in the past. This is what happened before, so definitely this is what's going to happen now, or in the future, which, like this might happen, and, coming back to present tense. Keep bringing it back to all your powers in the present. So coming back again and again and again to present tense. And that's where that intersection of fate and free will happens. And that's where our power is, right there. So, we can get stuck right now in a holding pattern, in a waiting pattern, and sort of put our power out there. We need to bring it back toward ourselves, into our center. Bring power back to your center. Center yourself in your heart, in your body, bringing that power back, calling that authority back to yourself, while also simultaneously remembering that you exist in relationship to everything. You are that relationship, in fact. So we're being asked for really big stuff right now, and if we're going to insist on being small and, just operating from fear and maintenance of our self-concept and these kinds of things, this, in as much as we're doing that, that is equal to the suffering we can bring upon ourselves at this point. What's needed is a surrender. This doesn't mean defeat. It just means, right, I'm in the water, so I'm going to swim. This is the music, so I'm going to dance. Instead of like holding our ears shut and being like, I don't want to hear that. That's not the music I want to hear right now. It's like, okay, that's what's there. And again, this isn't being passive. This is getting that balance, Libra, of the yin and yang energy. That's getting that balance of inspiration and mastery. That's getting that balance of surrender and action at the same time. That's in accordance with what the relationships are in your life. There's a lot that is coming up from the past. There is a lot that we're looking back maybe at what we've done, what we've committed to, where we've put our energy, and maybe there were, older incarnations of ourselves that are coming back to haunt us now, ways that we did things and were committed to certain things or did not commit to things that maybe we should have, or at least our level of consciousness now may have us looking and going, oh, if only I had. But the thing is, you can't do that, because if only you had, well, you didn't know what you know now. That the reason you know what you know now is because of what you've done and what you've been through and what you've experienced and what you've observed and the ways that you've grown, the work you've done for yourself. So we can't do that. But there is this kind of energy that might draw us into the past and take inventory of where we've been. And that can include even past lives, because we do have this really active, the moon's nodes are still quite active right now. So there's that. And then Scorpio energy, we have Venus also in a sign where she's not entirely comfortable. She's in Mars territory. Mars is in Venus's territory, and Venus is in Mars territory in Scorpio. In the older astrology, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, even though in the modern, Pluto is. So both of these planets are quite activated with the Scorpio energy. Now, Venus in Scorpio is said to be in her fall. She's basically a fallen goddess, a fallen woman in Scorpio. Scorpio has to do with the, as we euphemistically call them, the regenerative organs, right? The sexual, our physical sexual organs, and sexuality, the psychological aspects of sexuality, and the way that these sacred things, the sacredness of sexuality was transformed into taboo, and how we might take those taboos and transform them back into what's sacred. That is considered to be fallen for Venus. She's the fallen woman, right? Fallen feminine. And in fact, perhaps she's in, just like Mars can become a brilliant strategist in Libra, perhaps in Venus, Venus in Scorpio, she becomes powerful in a way that she isn't even in her own signs. Because she's in a sign where she's out of her element, it draws out things about her that she doesn't normally, or maybe not normally because she's in this, she's in this sign regularly, but she doesn't, in her own home territory, in her own element, might not have developed, right? So again, this is another planet that we're all feeling, this is all coming through all of us, out of element, out of her element. So we might find ourselves in situations where we don't quite feel at home, and yet this is drawing out aspects of ourselves that we need to develop in some way. So Venus in Scorpio is this very passionate, intense need to merge and be deeply intimate and draw out the most, both primitive and sophisticated aspects of our sexuality and our psychology and all of that. So we might be feeling that kind of interest and fascination with things that are challenging or difficult in these ways in order to evolve and transform and develop a more deeply connected, intimate relationship with ourselves through the mirror of relationship. And so Venus and Mars in each other's signs, this is another one of the ways that we might find ourselves out of our element is being, having confrontation with our shadow side through our relationships, especially if these relationships are with the opposite sex or with somebody who is opposite us in polarity, even if it's not the physical sex of the person, the opposite, polarity from ourselves. And one of the reasons, in relationship, the more intimate we get, the more we have to look at things about ourselves that are not, we're in our own element, we're good, right? We're cruising. When we're not in our element, we're not. We hit the bumps in the road because we're being challenged on, who we are when we're in somebody else's territory, looking through their lens. And especially, again, the more intimate we get, the more that we are confronted with that. These are the things that you're doing. And while they may make sense to you from your perspective, from the polarity that you tend to occupy, from my perspective, from the polarity that I tend to occupy, that makes zero sense. And why are you doing that? And what are you trying to get out of this? And what are you trying to get out of me? So we get into these kinds of things. That too can be challenging because we want to just feel valued for ourselves the way that we are and the way we're doing things and feel like it's natural. Well, again, when these planets are in their home signs, that can happen. But when they're out of element and they're in each other's territory, we sort of have to take on the perspective of who's opposing us, right? So, and opposing us, that can be somebody we're in conflict with or somebody we're in intimacy with. Sometimes in terms of evolution, it's the same difference, right? So then Mercury's also in Scorpio right now. Mercury's going to be in Scorpio for quite some time because Mercury will retrograde in Scorpio, and it's going to be a few months, and it's going to really, Mercury is going to occupy the sign of deep transformation, Scorpio, soul evolution through confrontation with shadow, through the deep mysteries, the invisibles, the exchange of energy and intimacy. That's what Scorpio is all about, those things. Mercury in Scorpio Mercury's how we think, speak, communicate, how we mentally interface with other people, how we network, conduct business, and how we think, how we're thinking about things. So Mercury in Scorpio wants to deeply investigate, like in this almost forensic-like way. And so Mercury in Scorpio is going to be basically the psychopomp, the guide of souls through the rest of these months leading up to Saturn and Pluto coming together. And that's one of Mercury's jobs, is to be the psychopomp, to be the guide of souls, the one who can mercurially, change and transform to be able to exist on different planes, which, requiring different kinds of energetic configurations. Mercury can go from the heavens to the middle world of the earth and back down to the underworld and up again, and guide souls from to these different planes, right? Scorpio represents the highest high and the lowest low. So he's well placed here, and he's going to be our guide while in Scorpio. He's going to go retrograde, so that is, a retrospective. We're just going to take a little ride through the haunted house of the past with and deal with these shadows and shades that maybe we left behind, be that of rejection or creating taboos for ourselves or whatever. And, and as much as we're in agreement with the rejection of these aspects of ourselves, either we do it to ourselves through trauma, right? I can't have this be a real, something that is true about me because it invited this horrible situation, so I'm going to reject this and put this down here, or because it's socially unacceptable to be a certain way. Again, Venus and Scorpio also, the fallen aspects of, of the feminine. And so, Mercury through Scorpio is like this soul retrieval journey, and where we're going to have to draw those in order to gain full power again and full authority in tandem with divinity, with our divinity, and in relationship with the rest of the universe, which is ourselves too. This gets into a lot of esoteric, kind of layers and things, things that are simultaneously true that seem to contradict one another, right? But that's Mercury and Scorpio too, is to get deeper and deeper into these mysteries, to get deeper and more deeply initiated into these mysteries. There's so much more than what's visible. That's really what creates the world. And so Mercury is going to be that guide, that psychopomp, guiding us through the rest of this trajectory as we get toward the Saturn Pluto conjunction, which is this major shift in consciousness around power and authority. And, it's like we're kind of waking up to where we've been letting that be taken away from us and where we've been letting that go. And a lot of that's just we weren't able to not do that, because we've always just been working with what we know, what we have at the time that we know it and we have it, right? So this isn't when I say, way we've been letting that happen, this isn't, don't automatically go to shame, like, oh, I let this happen and I'm such a fuck up, and no, that's not what this is for. This is to take us to another evolutionary level, okay, so that we can go, these parts of ourselves that are undeveloped and not quite, that just want to go to the next step. These parts of ourselves that are caterpillar-like, sort of crawling along. And that's fine. It's fine to be a caterpillar. But then you can transform into a butterfly, and that's even better. And that's sort of what we're to do. That is just the next step of evolution. That is the next, the next level that we're to go. We just naturally want to do that. So there's what part of us is caterpillar-like that needs to get in that cocoon? We're in there now. This is happening now. It's in progress, where we're kind of falling apart and transforming ourselves. We can't get out of that cocoon early. Again, you do that. You try to get out of the cocoon early. You try to, okay, well, I'm just going to speed up this thing because I'm kind of done. I can't even, I'm just done. And you come out and you've got one wing and a half a wing coming out of your eye, or I don't know what you have. You just don't look good. So you can't do that. You have to complete the whole process, this underworldy process, right? So on the 23rd, the sun moves into Scorpio. So we'll be, on Wednesday, we'll be officially into Scorpio season. So that whole transformative process, I think, will, start to really kick into motion. We'll get out of some of the weight, the holding pattern, and move into the deeper stuff. And, what we're doing now is preparing us for the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, really. I mean, so all the things that we're doing moment to moment, the way we're thinking, what we're choosing to, emphasize and how we feel, and the way we're taking care of ourselves and the way we're relating to other people, and, how much we're letting fear take over versus, trying to bring it back home and back to center. All these choices we're making right now, and those, choices, we do always have choices. Those are going to add to or subtract from what happens when this conjunction occurs. So choose what is your highest, whenever you can. Sometimes you may need to have a temper tantrum and feel like shit and indulge in that, or, let yourself be afraid or depressed or whatever comes up with this whole time frame. You might need to indulge in that, and then whenever you can, try to bring it up higher. Try to be your highest self in the situation. And that comes from being present. Slowing down and being present. Because it can be really uncomfortable, and we're trying to get out of it and move fast. And if I just move fast, maybe this will stop. But maybe that's not the answer. Maybe the relief is in leaning into things and being with what is. All right, so I'm going to pull our card for this week. And the card is the Six of Pentacles, which I really like this card. It's really generous and charitable kind of card. It has to do with balance and, emotional and physical balance, and, being able to give and be generous of yourself. And maybe there's ways that you could think about things in, kind of when we have this Pluto Saturn thing going on, it can really sort of activate our primitive brain, our lower chakra system, like the way that, it can kick us into survival mode. And that's normal. That's not something that, again, you want to feel shame about or feel like, things aren't right if that you're having those feelings. But perhaps one of the antidotes to that feeling is to think about how you can be of service. And it may feel like I don't have the extra energy to be in service. I really need to hunker down and take care of myself. Right now, I've got so much on my own plate, on my own mind, and okay, that might be true. And if that's true for you, that's okay. But maybe the antidote to some of the strain and stress, the emotional part of it, is to be generous and to say, okay, how can I serve? Like, what is it in me that is that I can bring to the table? What do I have to offer? And, just small things. It doesn't have to be anything big. But how can I be of service? And sometimes when we focus on that, again, relationships, when we focus on that, not in a sacrificial martyry kind of way, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really bringing what you can offer, coming from your strengths, coming from what you're good at, coming from what you do naturally, what you're naturally aligned with to do. So maybe you're not good with finances, but you know how to bring magic to the world. Or maybe you're not really good with the magic part, but you know how to build stuff. Or, maybe what can you bring that may lift other people up, because that lifts you up as well, because you're going at the world with trust that, you can work together and make this better. And maybe you need help, and maybe you need to be receiving what other people have to offer and not just going at it alone. Because one of the things with this Pluto-Saturn thing is we can start to isolate, and that's not going to be good either. So we need to be exchanging our energies in a way that is mutually supportive and that cultivates relationships. So, not in a way that's either martyry or overly, taxing on your system so that you can get, your needs met, through manipulation. That's not a good idea. or also like just taking from other people in a way that makes you feel guilty or indebted and things like that. But what can you, if you need help, what can you also bring? So this is the kind of thing I'm thinking about with the Six of Pentacles. You know, you make a contribution and you're valued, and you bring value to the situation as well as receiving value and keeping the energy flowing that way. Just keeping the energy flowing. Because again, one of the other things with Pluto Saturn is when we hunker down, we get into survival mode, we stop the energy. We like stop it up. Every person for themselves. I'm just going to take care of what my own thing and hope for the best for you. But, we stop up the energy and it stops flowing through our bodies and through our systems in a way that, and then we get unhealthy, that stopped up chi. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for tuning in. Many blessings and take care.